Everyone, it's Christian here, and per request, I'm doing a review of Trachycarpus fortunei. I've known of this planting for about 5 years, and essentially this is a Publix parking lot. There's a big, let me see if you can get it up here, but I don't know if you can see that up there. But there's a big shopping plaza that was built here around 2010. This is all farmland, and now there's the shopping plaza beyond the wall here. There's a subdivision which I've been into. It's gated, which is really, I mean, there's just a gate around it. It doesn't really provide any security, but it's just a bunch of tract housing, and it's kind of, they use the same entrance here, and you can't really see well across the street because of the glare. But they're burning down tree. It smells like they're burning in wood piles, and they're clearing land for what I assume is either another shopping plaza or another development, which is just unfortunate. But they did a decent job landscaping here. You can see all the Bismarcks, and there's actually 4 or so fortunei over there, but they're not in full sun. There's not a good viewing perspective, so this one was in full sun, easier to see through camera. So I don't know if you can tell, but the reason I haven't done this before, this review, is because these don't do very well down here. If you can see, it has a healthy root system. It has, healthy fibrous trunk, which is typical of the species. And then when you get to the last foot or so, this is the amount of time it's spent here in Florida, or in this area of Florida. And you can see that the trunk, the hair is kind of falling off here. The bases are you can see it's kind of stunted here. And the leaflets, they're not out fully, they're kind of compact. That's due to the intensity of the sun, I believe, as well as humidity issues. That it basically, it doesn't like our very high lows at night in the summer, as well as the winter time. I would say that if you don't get below 50 to 52 degrees Fahrenheit, or 10 to 12 Celsius in the winter time regularly, then this is going to have a hard time growing here in your climate, and it's very humid. These tend to grow in more open air, cooler areas that don't have such high daytime highs, and they do like that cool weather. The same goes for Butea and many other species that grow in colder regions. Now, fortunei, I believe, is native endemic to the southern Himalayan area. I don't know if it grows anywhere else in there. But I think all Trachycarpus, they're endemic to northern India, Nepal, Bhutan, I believe, and maybe go into China a little bit, maybe northern Bangladesh, so in northern Indochina. But this is known for, it's known as the Chinese windmill palm. It's the most common variety, and it's grown quite a bit over northern Florida. You see them a lot. I saw more of these than any other palm when I was in Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina. It's a great plant. It grows really well up there, and that's where it would do best in a more moderate subtropical climate. And here in a borderline subtropical / tropical climate, they just don't do as well down here. So I don't, they aren't well grown. Now, its cousin Trachycarpus wagnerianus, which has a stiffer leaflet, a more upright look, more compact look, smaller plant, actually does really well down here, surprisingly, and it's one of the few species that does do well. So these aren't cultivated much down here. That's why I haven't done a review, but per request, because there was one fairly nearby, I went ahead and did that. It kind of looks like a Cocothrinax at first look, and a lot of people who aren't familiar with Trachycarpus, or trachees as we call them, down here think that these are Cocothrinax, and because they have a similar leaflet pattern, they have the divided, segmented leaves, palmate leaves with a hestula there. If you were to cut it off and hand it to someone, they would think that's a Cocothrinax leaflet, and they have a very similar look, and they provide that with a cold hardy option, basically a cold hardier option, because some Cocothrinax are quite cold hardy. So these are going to grow in seasonally dry, wet climates. I believe they're kind of on the northern end of the monsoonal area in India there, and they can take quite a bit of cold. Let's see, as far as I can tell from friends that have these, like say in Tennessee, northern Alabama, North Carolina, Virginia, 5 degrees Fahrenheit is not, it does very little damage unprotected, and about 0 is where it starts getting some serious damage. Anything above that, 10-15 degrees Fahrenheit, they do seem to do quite fine on a regular basis. Now, one thing that I can tell you is that these fibrous trunks, this fiber actually protects the plant from both heat and cold. So if you are in a climate that, for example, I believe that if we were to remove this fiber from this trunk, this plant might actually do better. It's shown that some palms, like Washingtonia foliifera, if you remove the fibrous bases that stay underneath the trunk, they actually do okay in Florida. Where if you don't do that, they actually have quite a problem with fungus and mold, and that's because it collects all of that and causes more fungal issues. And that's part of the problem that happens here, is that this doesn't have the genetics to handle both the heat and the fungal issues that are going to come about here in Florida. I mean, it's October 20th now. You know, it's about 10 o'clock, not even 10 in the morning. It's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's going to be about, what, 24 Celsius, something like that, and maybe 26, 27. And it's going, you know, these want to start going, they want to start hitting a cool period about this time, so they're not getting that. So if we scroll over here, I don't know if you guys can see, let me see if I can zoom in on this one there. That one doesn't look too great. And then there's one there, and I believe that might be it. Now, there was once about a dozen of these here planted. There were 6 on each side. Now, as you can see, you can count 0 others. They just kind of added in some bushes. Whoever spec'd the landscape, meaning they decided what was going to be planted in here. You can see where they once were. There was one right there. There was one up there, and then, as you can see, they kind of went along. So this is the last remaining one. It just happens to have some genetics that allowed it, or just wasn't getting. It's either getting, you know, a certain amount of water that was helping it out, but it's amazing how the fiber does play a part in that, and obviously our humidity is going to play a part. Now, I'm trying to see if there's any sort. I thought I saw some odd growth, but I haven't seen these flower. I don't think they're very happy here. So, from my experience in growing trachees, I've only grown a few species, and the seed is going to look like a little, like a kidney bean with like a cut in the middle, and they seem to germinate with very little help down here. So if you just kind of leave them around, I left them. My first experience in growing trachees was I got some seed from it was Trachycarpus. It was fortunei crosses wagnerianus, and so I thought, okay, this might do well here. So I had the seeds in a plastic bag, and no media, so meaning there's nothing else in it but the plastic, and I left them in my house at 77 degrees during the summer, and I just kind of, they stayed there. I forgot about them, and I went back to them like, oh, these are going to be no good. They're going to be dried out or rotted, or just, you know, just going to just fall apart. And sure enough, they were all germinated, and they wanted to be potted up. So I potted them up, and they were doing well, leafing out. But you could tell that they were getting a leaf spot from just our humid climate here. So they were going to survive, and the hybrid, I believe, would do okay here, much better than this plant would do. But this is about as good as it gets here in this area of Florida. If you go south from here, they just don't do well at all. There's a couple in Miami that I've seen that actually do okay. They have a more moderating climate in the summer that doesn't make it so it's as brutally hot. It stays warm all the time, but it doesn't get up to like 94, 95 degrees like we can get here in the West Coast. So, yeah, you know, to germinate these is pretty easy. You don't really need any media, but I would put something. I would put some peat or some perlite. You know, keep it moist, keep it around 75 to 80 degrees. And it seemed like it only took a few weeks to germinate. They'll germinate and put out a strap leaf. They are remote germinators from what I remember. And keep them somewhere in the 70 to 85 degree range, and they seem to be happiest there. So maybe even a little bit less, maybe 65 to 85. So that's going to be the extent of my knowledge about growing trachees, and here, you know, my examples of what I can find here in this part of Southwest Florida. So I hope you enjoyed this video, If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions about trachees or other cold hardy plants, I will do a hands-on frost protection kind of how-to video once I get down to an area where I can do that. Right now I'm in the camper. I am staying up in the Venice, Sarasota area, and I don't have any ability to, like, I don't have any real estate to work with up here. So when I get back down to the Fort Myers area, Cape Coral, I can do that. And anyway, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. And if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. And have any requests, go ahead and you know, I will go ahead and do any video that I am able to do within reason. Obviously, I can't drive 3 hours to review one palm, but if I'm in the area, if I'm driving through an area and I know there's some plants around, I'll stop and do that. I don't mind doing that. I'd like to get as many people hooked on growing palms as I can. It's a very good addiction. There are many, as I told many of my buyers back in the day, they said it was an addiction. I said, well, there's a lot more, there's a lot worse addictions out there. So growing plants is not a bad addiction, in my opinion. So anyway, leave you guys there. Thanks for watching, and I will see y'all next time.